When a billionaire's daughter stood in Judge Caprio's courtroom and said those three shocking words, "I'll buy you," the entire room went silent. Even Judge Caprio, a man who's seen everything in his decades on the bench, was left completely speechless. But what happened in the next 8 minutes would become the most talked-about case in Caught in Providence history. And trust me, you need to hear how this all started. This is Madison Pierce, the 26-year-old daughter of tech billionaire Robert Pierce, founder of Pierce Technologies. She rolled into Providence traffic court in a $400,000 Rolls-Royce Phantom, wearing Cartier sunglasses worth more than most people's monthly rent. The charge? Running a red light. The fine? $85. Pocket change for someone whose family fortune is estimated at $3.2 billion. But what Madison said to Judge Caprio wasn't about the ticket. It was about something that would expose a worldview so twisted it would shock everyone watching. And the judge's response? You won't see it coming. To understand this case, you need to understand Madison Pierce's world. Born into unimaginable wealth, she'd never heard the word no in her entire life. Private jets, unlimited credit cards, a penthouse in Manhattan, a villa in the French Riviera, a beachfront property in Malibu. Money wasn't just abundant in her life, it was the answer to everything. Got a speeding ticket in Miami? Her father's lawyer handled it. Crashed her Ferrari in Los Angeles? Bought a new one the next day. Wanted reservations at a fully booked Michelin star restaurant? A $10,000 donation to the owner made a table appear. In Madison's world, everything and everyone had a price, and she'd never encountered a situation where money couldn't solve the problem. But here's what makes this case so significant. Madison's traffic violation wasn't her first. It was her 17th. 17 times she'd broken traffic laws in different states. 17 times money had made the problem disappear. Her father had a team of lawyers whose only job was to make his daughter's problems vanish. They'd paid off fines, negotiated dismissed charges, and settled disputes before they ever reached a courtroom. But this time was different. This time, Madison was in Providence, Rhode Island. And in Providence, there's a judge who doesn't care about your bank account, your family name, or your connections. Judge Caprio has built a reputation on treating every person the same, whether they're homeless or a CEO. And Madison was about to learn that the hardest way possible. The morning of her court appearance, Madison didn't even consider that she might actually face consequences. She treated it like a minor inconvenience, something to squeeze in between her hair appointment and lunch at a trendy downtown restaurant. She showed up 20 minutes late, strutting into the courtroom like she owned it, designer heels clicking on the floor, her attitude radiating entitlement. As Madison approached the bench, Judge Caprio looked up from the case file in front of him. He's a man who prides himself on reading people, on seeing beyond the surface to understand who's really standing before him. And what he saw in Madison Pierce troubled him deeply. Not anger, not remorse, not even nervousness, just complete indifference, as if this entire process was beneath her. Judge Caprio began with his typical approach, calm and measured. Ms. Pierce, I see here you ran a red light at the intersection of Westminster and Union Street on October 15th at 2:47 p.m. The officer's report indicates you were traveling approximately 58 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. Do you dispute these facts? Madison barely looked at him. She was checking her phone, scrolling through Instagram, completely disengaged. Your Honor, I really don't have time for this. Can we just settle this quickly? I have places to be. The courtroom collectively held its breath. No one talks to Judge Caprio like that. Not because he's intimidating or harsh, but because he commands respect through his fairness and compassion. People come into his courtroom expecting justice, not dismissiveness. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. Ms. Pierce, I'm going to need you to put your phone away and give this court your full attention. This is a serious matter. You were driving more than twice the speed limit in a residential area. There's a school 2 blocks from where you were caught. Children cross that intersection every day. Madison sighed dramatically, finally putting her phone in her designer handbag. Fine. Look, I understand I was speeding. I'm willing to pay whatever the fine is. Can we move this along? But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. He flipped through her file, his expression growing more serious with each page. Ms. Pierce, I'm looking at your driving record here, and I have to say it's concerning. This isn't your first violation. In fact, in the past 3 years, you've accumulated 17 traffic violations across 6 different states. Speeding, running red lights, illegal parking in handicapped zones, reckless driving. This is a pattern of behavior that suggests you believe traffic laws don't apply to you. For the first time, Madison looked slightly uncomfortable. But instead of showing remorse, she doubled down on her attitude. Your Honor, with all due respect, I've paid every fine. I've handled every situation. I don't see what the problem is. Judge Caprio removed his glasses, a gesture those familiar with his courtroom know signals he's about to say something important. The problem, Ms. Pierce, is that traffic laws aren't suggestions. They exist to protect people's lives. Every time you speed through a residential area, every time you run a red light, you're putting innocent people at risk. And paying a fine afterwards doesn't undo the danger you created. Madison's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being lectured, especially not by someone she viewed as just another civil servant. I understand that, Your Honor, and I'm willing to pay this fine right now. I can write you a check before I leave. Judge Caprio shook his head slowly. This isn't about the money, Ms. Pierce. This is about accountability. This is about understanding that actions have consequences and that wealth doesn't exempt you from the law. That's when Madison made her fatal mistake. A mistake that would change the entire trajectory of this case and reveal just how distorted her worldview had become. She leaned forward, her voice taking on a tone that was almost casual, as if she was negotiating a business deal. Your Honor, let's be realistic here. We both know how this works. Everything has a price. So let's skip the moral lecture and get to the number. What's it going to take to make this go away? 5,000? 10,000? Name your price, and I'll have my accountant wire it today. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Judge Caprio's face went from surprised to absolutely stunned. Even Inspector Quinn, standing at the side of the courtroom, looked like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. But Madison wasn't done. Interpreting the judge's silence as negotiation, she pressed forward, her confidence growing. Look, I get it. You probably don't make a lot on a judge's salary. I'm not trying to insult you, I'm just being practical. My father always taught me that every problem has a solution, and every solution has a price. So let's just cut through the bureaucracy here. She opened her handbag and pulled out a checkbook, an actual physical checkbook, something most people hadn't seen in years. I can write you a personal check right now, $20,000, $30,000, whatever you think is fair. Or if you prefer, I can have my father make a donation to the court system, fund some renovations, upgrade the technology in here. This place could certainly use it. And then she said it. The words that would make this case go viral, that would be replayed millions of times across social media, that would become a defining moment in Caught in Providence history. Madison looked Judge Caprio directly in the eyes and said with absolute sincerity, Your Honor, be reasonable. Everyone has a price. So do you. I'm offering to pay it. Just tell me the number and I'll buy you. I'll buy you. Not, I'll buy my way out of this. Not, I'll pay the fine. But, I'll buy you. As if Judge Frank Caprio, a man who'd dedicated his entire life to public service, who'd turned down lucrative private sector opportunities to serve his community, who'd built a reputation on integrity and compassion, was just another item on a shopping list. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear every breath in that courtroom. Judge Caprio sat completely still, his face a mixture of shock, disappointment, and something else. Sadness. Because in that moment, He realized he wasn't just dealing with a spoiled rich girl. He was witnessing the result of a worldview so corrupted by wealth that it had completely eroded her understanding of human dignity and moral values. The bailiff moved slightly, as if considering whether to intervene. Inspector Quinn's mouth hung open. The court reporter's fingers froze above her keyboard. Everyone was waiting to see how Judge Caprio would respond to what could only be described as an attempted bribery of a sitting judge. Judge Caprio finally spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying a weight that made every person in that room lean forward. "Ms. Pierce, I want you to understand something very clearly. What you just did, offering me money to dismiss your case, that's not just inappropriate. It's illegal. You just attempted to bribe a judge in open court in front of witnesses on camera. Do you understand the severity of what you've done?" For the first time, genuine fear flashed across Madison's face. I wasn't trying to bribe you. I thought we could work something out. That's how things work in my world." Judge Caprio leaned forward, his voice growing stronger. "Well, this isn't your world, Ms. Pierce. This is my courtroom. And in my courtroom, integrity is not for sale. Justice is not for sale. I am not for sale. And the fact that you thought you could walk in here and buy your way out of accountability tells me everything I need to know about why you have 17 traffic violations." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You don't believe rules apply to you. You think money can solve everything. And someone, somewhere along the line, failed to teach you that there are things in this world that matter more than wealth, like dignity, like respect, like the value of human life." Madison's hands were shaking now. The confidence had completely drained from her face, replaced by something she'd rarely experienced in her privileged life, genuine consequences. "Your Honor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" But Judge Caprio held up his hand. "I'm going to stop you right there because I don't think you understand what sorry means. Sorry isn't something you say when you get caught. It's something you feel when you genuinely recognize you've done something wrong." He glanced down at her file again, then back up at her. "I've been on this bench for many years, Ms. Pierce. I've seen people from every walk of life. I've seen people with nothing show more dignity and respect than you've shown today. I've seen single mothers working 3 jobs scrape together money to pay a $50 parking ticket, apologizing through tears for making a mistake. I've seen elderly people on fixed incomes offer to do community service because they couldn't afford their fines. I've seen people take full responsibility for their actions, even when those actions were understandable given their circumstances." His voice grew more passionate. "And then I see you. Someone with every advantage in the world. Someone who will never worry about where her next meal comes from, whether she can afford rent, whether her children will have clothes for school. And what do you do with that privilege? You use it as a weapon. You use it to place yourself above everyone else, above the law, above basic human decency." Madison was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished, because this wasn't just about Madison Pierce anymore. This was about something bigger, something he felt needed to be said. "You asked me what my price is. You want to know what it would take to buy me? Let me tell you something, Ms. Pierce. My parents were immigrants. They came to this country with nothing. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses. They saved every penny so their children could have opportunities they never had. They taught me that character isn't built by wealth. It's built by how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from treating them well." He continued, his voice filled with emotion. "I went to law school while working full-time. I served this community for decades. And yes, I could have made more money in private practice. I could have had a bigger house, fancier cars, luxury vacations. But you know what I have instead? I have the respect of my community. I have the knowledge that I've helped people, that I've shown compassion when others showed judgment, that I've upheld justice fairly and equally for everyone who walks through that door." Judge Caprio looked directly at Madison, his eyes boring into hers. So my price, Ms. Pierce? My price is my integrity, and unlike everything else in your life, that's something you cannot buy. Not for $20,000, not for $1 million, not for your father's entire fortune, because the moment I accept your money, I lose the only thing that truly matters, my honor. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Several people were crying. Even Inspector Quinn had to wipe his eyes. This wasn't just a traffic case anymore. This was a masterclass in values, in integrity, in what it means to be a person of principle in a world that increasingly measures worth by bank accounts. But Judge Caprio wasn't done yet, because while he was disappointed and angry, he was also, at his core, an educator. He saw an opportunity not just to punish, but to teach. And that's what makes Judge Caprio different from any other judge in America. He took a deep breath, his voice becoming calmer but no less firm. Ms. Pierce, I'm going to do something now that might surprise you. I'm not going to hold you in contempt for attempting to bribe me, though I would be well within my rights to do so. I'm not going to refer this case to the prosecutor's office for criminal charges, though what you did absolutely warrants it. And I'm not going to throw the book at you with the maximum fines and penalties, though your driving record certainly justifies it. Madison looked up, confused and hopeful. Thank you, Your Honor, I really am. Judge Caprio held up his hand again. I'm not finished. I'm not doing this because you deserve leniency. I'm doing this because I believe in second chances. I believe that people can change. And I believe that sometimes the best way to teach someone a lesson isn't through punishment, but through understanding. He leaned forward again. So here's what's going to happen. Your fine for this traffic violation is $85. I want you to pay it. But I don't want your money to go to the court system. I want you to take that $85 and I want you to multiply it by 1,000. That's $85,000. And I want you to donate it to a charity here in Providence that helps struggling families pay their traffic fines and court fees. Madison nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor. I can do that. I'll write a check today. But Judge Caprio shook his head. No, Ms. Pierce. You're not just going to write a check. Writing a check is easy for you. It's meaningless. What I want you to do is volunteer at that charity. I want you to meet the people who come in there desperate and afraid. I want you to hear their stories. I want you to understand what it's like when $85 is the difference between keeping your lights on or sitting in the dark. I want you to see the single mothers who have to choose between paying a parking ticket or buying groceries for their children. He continued, his voice taking on a mentoring tone. I'm sentencing you to 200 hours of community service at Providence Community Justice Center. You're going to help people navigate the court system. You're going to sit with families who are terrified they'll lose their licenses and their livelihoods over fines they can't afford. You're going to do it without your designer clothes, without your attitude, and without your sense of superiority. You're going to do it as a human being serving other human beings. Madison wiped her tears, her voice small. Your Honor, I will. I promise. I will. Judge Caprio's expression softened slightly, but his words remained firm. And here's the other part. I'm suspending your license for 6 months. For the next 6 months, you're going to experience what millions of Americans experience every day, figuring out how to get around without a car. You're going to take public transportation. You're going to walk. You're going to understand what privilege really means by temporarily living without it. He paused, making sure she understood. And if, after those 6 months, you complete your community service with genuine effort and commitment, if the people at that charity tell me you showed up with humility and really tried to help, if you demonstrate that you've learned something from this experience, then I'll restore your license. But if you blow this off, if you treat it like another inconvenience that money can solve, if you show the same attitude you showed today, then we'll revisit this case, and I promise you the consequences will be much more severe. Madison nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I understand, Your Honor, and I'm truly sorry. Not because I got caught, but because Because you're right. About everything. I've never had to think about what my actions cost other people. I've never had to consider anyone but myself. And that's wrong. That's really, deeply wrong. For the first time, Judge Caprio saw something real in her eyes. Actual remorse. Actual understanding. It was a beginning, at least. Ms. Pierce, I want you to know something. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're a person who's been failed by the people who should have taught you better. Wealth isn't evil. Having money isn't wrong. But believing that money makes you more valuable than other people? That's where everything falls apart. He softened his tone even more. You have an opportunity now that most people never get. You have the resources to make a real difference in people's lives. You can use your privilege to help rather than to separate yourself. You can choose to be a person of character and compassion instead of just a person with a big bank account. The question is, what are you going to choose? Madison stood there, no longer the confident, entitled woman who'd walked into the courtroom an hour ago. She looked smaller somehow, humbled, stripped of the armor of arrogance she'd worn her entire life. Your Honor, I want to be better. I want to use this chance to actually become someone worth respecting. Not because of my last name or my father's money, but because of who I am as a person. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. Then that's what I want to see. Court officers will provide you with the information for Providence Community Justice Center. You're to report there within 1 week to begin your community service. Your license suspension begins immediately. Do you have any questions? Madison shook her head. No, Your Honor, thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. As Madison turned to leave, Judge Caprio called out one more time. Ms. Pierce? She turned back. 6 months from now, I want you to come back to this courtroom. Not because you're in trouble, but because I want to hear about your experience. I want to know if this made a difference, and I want to shake your hand as someone who chose to be better. Can you do that for me? Madison smiled through her tears, a real smile this time. Yes, Your Honor. I'll be here. And thank you. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving. The case went viral within hours. The video of Madison saying, "I'll buy you," was shared millions of times across every social media platform. Some people were outraged, calling for harsher punishment. Others praised Judge Caprio's approach, calling it a masterclass in restorative justice. But everyone agreed on one thing. They'd never seen anything quite like it. But here's the part that didn't go viral, the part that makes this story truly remarkable. 6 months later, Madison Pierce returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom, just as she promised. But she wasn't the same person who'd left in tears half a year ago. She walked in wearing simple jeans and a sweater, no designer labels in sight. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no jewelry except a simple necklace. And when she approached the bench, she did so with humility and genuine respect. Judge Caprio smiled when he saw her. Ms. Pierce, welcome back. I've been looking forward to this day. I've received reports from Providence Community Justice Center. They tell me you exceeded your 200 hours. They tell me you showed up early every day, that you sat with families for hours helping them understand their options, that you paid fees for people who couldn't afford them out of your own pocket without anyone asking you to. Is that true? Madison nodded. It is, Your Honor. And I want to thank you. Those 6 months changed my life. I met people who taught me more about strength and dignity than I'd learned in my entire privileged existence. I met a single mother who walked 3 miles each way to court because she couldn't afford the bus fare. I met a veteran who cried when we helped him understand he had options beyond going to jail for unpaid fines. I met children who were terrified their parents wouldn't come home because of tickets they couldn't pay. Her voice grew stronger. And I realized something. I realized that I'd been living in a bubble my entire life, completely disconnected from what real life is like for most people. The only thing I'd ever bought with my money was more stuff. But at that charity, I learned I could buy someone time with their family, hope when they felt hopeless, and dignity when the world was trying to strip it from them. That's what money should be used for. Not to put yourself above others, but to lift others up. Judge Caprio's eyes were glistening. Ms. Pierce, I have to tell you, I've been a judge for a very long time, and I've seen many people walk through that door, but I've rarely seen someone embrace an opportunity for change the way you have. I'm proud of you, not because you completed your sentence, but because you transformed yourself. He picked up a document from his desk. Your license is hereby reinstated, but I want you to remember something every time you get behind the wheel. Remember the people you met. Remember that every time you make a choice, to speed, to run a light, to drive recklessly, you're making a choice that affects other people's lives. Remember that your privilege comes with responsibility. Madison smiled. I will, Your Honor. In fact, I wanted to tell you something. I've created a foundation called Second Chance Initiative. We're partnering with traffic courts across the country to help people who can't afford their fines. We're also funding defensive driving programs and providing transportation assistance for people who've lost their licenses and can't get to work. It launched last month, and we've already helped 500 families. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench, something he rarely does during proceedings. He walked around and extended his hand to Madison. Ms. Pierce, you asked me 6 months ago what my price was. I told you then that my price was my integrity. But now I'm going to tell you something else. The price of a meaningful life isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people you help, the difference you make. And by that measure, you're becoming very wealthy indeed. They shook hands, and the courtroom erupted in applause. People were crying, including Inspector Quinn, who'd watched the entire transformation from beginning to end. This wasn't just about a traffic ticket anymore. This was about redemption. This was about someone who had everything yet had nothing, learning what actually matters in life. After the court session ended, Madison did something unexpected. She asked if she could address the people in the courtroom. Judge Caprio allowed it. She turned to face the crowd, her voice steady and sincere. I want to say something to everyone here. 6 months ago, I stood in this exact spot and tried to buy a judge. I thought everything in life had a price. I thought my money made me special, made me above the rules. I was wrong, completely, utterly wrong. She took a breath. Judge Caprio could have destroyed my life that day. He could have charged me with attempted bribery. He could have made an example of me. But instead, he gave me something I didn't deserve. A second chance. And that gift changed everything. Madison's voice grew more emotional. If there's anyone here today facing consequences for something you've done, I want you to know that consequences aren't punishments. They're opportunities. They're chances to become better than you were. Take them. Embrace them. Let them transform you. Because the most valuable things in life, integrity, compassion, genuine human connection, those are things you can't buy. You have to earn them, and they're worth more than anything money can purchase. She looked back at Judge Caprio. Your Honor, you asked me once what kind of person I wanted to be. I want to be someone like you, someone who uses their position to lift people up, not put them down. Someone who sees the best in people even when they're showing you their worst. Someone whose life means something beyond their bank balance. That's who I want to be. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to get there. Judge Caprio smiled warmly. Ms. Pierce, you're already on your way, and I have no doubt you'll get there. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for proving that people can change. And thank you for reminding all of us what justice is really about. This case became legendary for a simple reason. It showed that Judge Caprio's courtroom isn't just about punishment or even forgiveness. It's about transformation. It's about meeting people in their darkest moments and showing them there's a better way. It's about recognizing that everyone, no matter how far they've fallen or how privileged they've been, deserves a chance to become better. Madison Pierce walked into that courtroom as a spoiled billionaire's daughter who thought she could buy anything, including a judge. She walked out as a human being who understood that the most valuable currency in life isn't money, it's character. And that transformation didn't happen because Judge Caprio was soft on her. It happened because he was willing to see past her worst moment to the person she could become. That's not just justice. That's wisdom. That's compassion. That's the Judge Caprio way. And that's why millions of people around the world watch Caught in Providence, because we all need reminders that redemption is possible, that change is real, and that sometimes the best way to teach someone their worth isn't by tearing them down, but by believing in who they can become. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and the power of compassion to transform lives, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to change. And leave a comment telling me, has anyone ever given you a second chance that changed your life? Because sometimes, the difference between who we are and who we become is simply someone who believed we could be better. Remember, be the Judge Caprio in someone else's life today. See past their mistakes to their potential. Offer grace when the world offers judgment. And believe that change is always possible. Thanks for watching.